bringing you a steady stream of thought-provoking ideas and cutting-edge innovation. You're listening to Society and the State, Life, Liberty, and Your Pursuit of Happiness. Now, your hosts, Connor Boyack and Brian Hyde.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 162. I'm excited about today's topic. We're talking with my friend, Pat Donohoe, who is the CEO of a company called Paradigm Life, and they do financial consulting. Pat, thanks for joining us today.
Connor, there is no better 30 minutes than this. I've been looking for this for about a week now.
Well, I'm excited. I'm excited about the topic because it's all about investing in yourself. And I've been doing a little bit of this. I've been doing some courses and some books. But you are, like, at least in my social circles, the guru. More than anyone I know, you invest in yourself. You are doing mastermind courses. You are reading books. At a recent conversation we had, I don't know if you remember this, but last time we met up, I had brought you a book. You're like, oh yeah, I have it, and I subscribe to their course, and I do this, and you're very dialed in on these types of things. So I'm trying to figure out the right way to start this, because a lot of our listeners are not like you, that they're a CEO. They're not a business owner. They're just, they've got a normal job or a stay-at-home mom or whatever. And from my vantage point, this investing in yourself definitely can and does help your business, especially if you're looking to be an entrepreneur or whatever. But there's so much benefit to this that can come in terms of personal development, family relationships, individual relationships. So that's kind of where I want to lead. But maybe let's start with talk about your business. Talk about what you do and why you've chosen to invest in yourself. How has it helped your business? Let's first start there, and then we can move over into kind of the personal development stuff as well. So what do you do, and what kind of investing in your business have you done in terms of this educational type of stuff?
Well, I'd first say, Connor, you've been an inspiration for me for so many years, and I'm probably one of the least intelligent people in your circles. And so it's kind of like I've had to do this, right, based on some of the commitments and drive that I've that I've had over the years. But I connected the dots a number of years ago that I was my own worst enemy, and I think that most people, if you were to ask them the question, who is your own worst enemy, they would answer themselves. And it really comes down to two things, right? It's the gap between where you're at and where you want to be. What you want is number one, identifying what you want. And there's always growth associated with with life in general. And we always have to be growing or we're dying. And the gap between where we're at right now and growing to the next level is either ignorance or discipline. So ignorance is obviously not having the information. Discipline is actually having the information but not doing anything about it. So that's where I realized that the chokehold of my family, the chokehold of my happiness, my level of fulfillment, my business was my psychology. And when I identified my psychology, which is how I perceive things, the meaning I place of what I perceive, and then ultimately, what am I actually trying to achieve from a psychological standpoint? And that's where I realized, the majority of how we act, how we behave, right, is unconscious. And what I mean by that is, we have our family experiences, we haven't even built into who we are, like our ancestors' experiences. And so 95 to 97% of what we do on a daily basis is unconscious, right? It's already programmed, whether it's our lexicon, the way we eat, our body language, how we respond to certain things, perceive certain things, right? It's by in large part unconscious. So with me, the business I'm in, to answer your actual question, right, is an interesting business because right now there is this, I would say, primary way in which people are managing their money, and it's to achieve this end of retirement. So I wrote a book, came out about a year ago called Heads I Win, Tails You Lose. And the premise of the introduction of the book, right, was to analyze how that system of money management came to be. And if you look at it, it was never for the benefit of the individual. It was always for the benefit of larger corporations, Wall Street. And you back into the notion of retirement, and how I, essentially go through logically in the book is it's anti-life, and logically it's not possible, especially in this day and age. So I took a stand a number of years ago with my business of, essentially setting up a financial strategy or a wealth strategy that, incorporates the discovery of, what you can do for a living that you actually love and enjoy and have fulfillment associated with your actual working years, as opposed to, deferring all of that fulfillment to some point in the future and having to deal with, essentially, a boss or a company or, the corporate structure or toxic environment or culture, right? I saw so much of that, and we took a stand and basically said that, financial strategy in large part should be, the understanding of who you are, the discovery of who you are, and the constant discovery of who you are, and then applying that to a specific trade.
Now, Pat, if I can ask you though, a lot of your investing in yourself, a lot of your kind of educational learning process is not so narrow into financial anything, right? It seems like you're doing a lot of these mastermind courses and books and programs that are much broader. I mean, some, from my vantage point on the sidelines, you're doing some marketing stuff or whatever, but a lot are just, it's networking, it's professional development, it's leadership, it's entrepreneurism. Like, there's so many aspects. So talk maybe about like what are maybe even be specific, like what's a specific course or specific program you've done, and how is it translated into helping your business? Because I feel like so much of what you've done isn't financially related per se. Any people of a variety of business types are seeking similar educational investments for themselves. And so maybe give us like an example or two of specific things that your business has benefited from that other businesses are similarly benefiting from by doing this type of professional development.
Oh, that's a great question. So I first, set the context of what a measurement of your financial life is, which is a financial statement. And we use something called the human life values statement, which is essentially the mirror of your financial statement. Because if you think about money is a receipt of value. You're the one that creates that value. So the true asset is you and a specific skill set that you have. So on the HLV statement, the human life values statement, you list, your strengths. On the liability side, you list your weaknesses. And strengths could be your network. It could be your training, your certification, just your nature, your conation, and identifying those assets and maximizing those by dedicating your time to earning more money, right? You are required to have, someone else do the work of whatever your liabilities are, your weaknesses. And that's where I look at, for me, a simple thing that I did years ago was to learn more about myself by taking different personality tests, whether it's the Kolbe A index, it could be Strengths Finder, it could be DISC, it could be Myers-Briggs. There are so many of these personality tests and assessments out there that allow you to understand who you are. So I first did that, and I recognized that I had some weaknesses, I had some tendencies, and over the years I've focused, my attention and my time around those activities, and then I've hired people essentially to perform the other duties. So a big investment that I made a number of years ago was figuring out how to find the right people that had the skill sets that complemented mine, but then also they fit within a specific culture and believed in certain principles and values that I did. That was a huge, huge investment for me that I spent years doing, coaching, analysis of different tests and so forth. And it's made a massive difference in my level of happiness, my productivity, and overall building of this business.
So Pat, I'm really glad that you mentioned the Kolbe A index, because this is a perfect example of what you just mentioned about, you've been at this for years and you've come across this thing that is suddenly helping your business that you didn't know about before. Literally only last week did I ever hear of, for the first time, the Kolbe A index. I just hired my first executive assistant just a few days ago. She started, and life is already wonderful. And in doing so, I listened to probably 15 to 20 hours of podcasts from other entrepreneurs, business owners, small business type folk about their experiences, right? Tips, tricks, here's what worked, here's what didn't work, learn from my mistake, learn from what's working. And in passing, this guy mentioned that he had taken the Colby A Index, that he had all of his employees do it. I'm going to, by the way, for our listeners, if they're curious, I'm going to link to this on the show notes page, which is societyandthestate.com/162. And basically, it's kind of like a strengths finder, right? It's showing you where your natural strengths are, and in so doing, showing you how you're going to best interact with other people based on their strengths, so that especially if you're a business owner, you can make sure that you're hiring the right people who have strengths that match where your potential weaknesses are, and so that you can work together in a very complementary way rather than in a conflicting way or anything like that. But I bring this up because I'm just chuckling to myself that for all the years now that I've been doing this and that I've been employing people, and yeah, I've been using Myers-Briggs, and that's all interesting and whatever, but literally only a week ago did I ever come across this Colby Index. And so it shows the importance of always be trying to like learn from other people and figure out what's working, because I could have never encountered this thing, and then it wouldn't be benefiting me the way that it is. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
And I think, Colby, I think those type of tests, I mean, focus on one, perfect that, and use that. The others could be supplement. But looking really at what I discovered over the years is there's two components to good people, right? One is what we've just been talking about, strengths, and what our conation is and our natural tendencies and how we go about getting results. However, there's another aspect, which is culture and values. And so I've used a system of interviewing called top grading. And top grading asks questions where you're able to identify a person's value set, their principles, and you know whether they're going to fit within the culture that you've designed and established. And all businesses have different culture. But I look at it from a business owner standpoint, and I'm hoping the business owners that are listening can understand the value of what we're talking about. But from an employee standpoint, right, when you're going to look for a job or you're going to change companies because you're dissatisfied, you can go and use these same ideas, right, to put onto your resume and discover whether a job is right for you, a position is right for you, a role is right for you. But also you can identify the culture of a business, because that is typically where your level of satisfaction and fulfillment is going to come from, not necessarily doing a job based on your strengths. That's
Pat,
part of it, but not the only thing.
When we say investing in yourself, maybe rattle off some of the things that you do, because it seems like you're always doing some of these courses. Give our listeners a sense of the breadth of the different programs that you've done, the masterminds. What all have you had experience with, just to kind of give some exposure to the types of things that a business owner might pursue?
Well, I've used a business coach for years, and I'm on my fourth round. Just because you grow out of them, you learn certain things and move on. But right now I have two women that are coaching me, and one is out of California, and she's very personal development psychology. The other is very similar. At the same time, she has a background in psychology, and she coaches the city council, and these are things where I'm able to go and discuss and talk about certain things and essentially have it as a non-biased opinion of what I'm talking about. And then they start to question certain things. So I think a business coach, right, is a massive investment, someone to hold you accountable, someone to push you, but also someone that is, detached from the situation that you're in. That's been massive for me. This may sound crazy to some people, and it's the whole, baby with the bathwater. There's certain things I love about him. There are certain things that I don't. But I've done a lot of the Tony Robbins events, and these are events where you go and you're just like psychologically, I don't know
assaulted.
You're assaulted for 3, 4, or 5 days. And what it's allowed me to understand is the importance that the feelings and the fulfillment that I want right now is possible right now, but the circumstances of my life don't have to happen first. And that's where I've learned so much from him from that standpoint, which has allowed me to have fun on vacation and not be concerned with business. I mean, I can go off on that, but I read books all the time. A lot of the books right now I'm reading Hernan de Soto's The Mystery of Capital. So I read a lot of economics books, but then I also read a lot of personal development, growth, and leadership books. But I would say, for those listening, and I'm not sure what your audience looks like, but everybody is a leader to some extent in their life, whether they're a wife, whether they're a mother, a husband, a father, a business leader. Even if you're in an office, you have leader. Whether it's in your church too. The understanding of what a leader is, which is not a manager. Okay, much different. It's like leadership and management are like opposite ends of the spectrum. Mm-hmm. But if you understand what a leader is and the power behind leadership and how you can achieve your own fulfillment, but also facilitate the fulfillment and success of others, I'm constantly learning about that. Cameron Herold is someone that I've read extensively. He wrote Double Double, Meetings Suck, Vivid Vision, and he runs the COO Alliance. I've benefited tremendously from that. Simon Sinek is another one that I think really understands the principles of leadership. And so those are, I would say, two authors that have inspired me to be a better person and to, like I said, remove this chokehold, which was my psychology and the growth of your business. And Connor, you're in this boat, right? Because the growth of Libertas, it's tied in essence to your psychology. You're the leader. Now, your team is really important. However, they're not going to grow beyond you. If they do, they're going to leave. And so it comes down to your specific psychology and what you're doing to look at ways in which you can improve it. So there's always ways.
Let me ask this question because this is kind of the cynic in me, and it's a silly question, but it's going to illustrate my point. You went to college, right?
Yeah.
And what did you major in?
Economics.
Did you do any advanced degrees, or is that your extent of your higher education?
I went down that path, but then stopped.
Okay. So shouldn't you have learned a lot of this in college? Like, why the need for, and this is a, farcical question. You understand where I'm driving here.
College teaches management, not leadership.
Exactly. Right. And so, and all this professional development stuff that you've been doing, all these little tips and tricks come from people who are in the trenches doing the work, not people who are talking about other people who do the work. Right. And occasionally at college, you do have professors that, have just recently come from industry and they have a lot of experience, and that's all well and good. But the best analogy I've seen, it was actually on LinkedIn just last week, and someone made this comment, and he's like, trying to teach business or trying to teach leadership is like trying to teach surfing to people sitting in a classroom and telling them when to anticipate the wave and when to push up on the board. And like, there's only so many things that you can learn from kind of this like abstracted review of how things work. So often this requires just being, deeply in the trenches and learning from mistakes and encountering differing ways of doing things and changing and being able to directly apply what you're learning. And again, I want to be careful because so much of this applies to running a business or employing people or having your own little entrepreneurial endeavor. But so much of this applies just to life in general. So maybe let's take the conversation there. How has your investment in your business, the professional development, these mastermind courses and all of this, how has it bled over, or how has it applied to you as a person, you as a father, you as a husband?
Well, this is what I'll say in conclusion. I'll comment briefly on what you had just said and then answer the question. We're going to my comment about 95 to 97% of our life is unconscious. We have to recognize that our school system, as well as the social structure that has been set up, has been set up through a system that originated in Germany. And so the school system, and Connor, you know this obviously, and you've written about it in books. I think your most recent book. But you look at, the school system and where it was derived, and it came from a Prussian, Bismarck idea. And it essentially has been programming, our society to be either supply chain, industrial type of workers being told what to do, or, essentially military. That's where it was designed for. And then looking at our retirement system, the money management system, Wall Street, who controls, tens of trillions of dollars, it has been designed based on some of those same premises. So it's built into our psychology. And in order to reprogram, you can't just read a book, right? It's this necessity of repetition over and over and over and over, and continuing to do it because of how programmed we are, which is also reinforced by the rest of society. So when it came to me, right, I always equated that I had to do certain things in order to achieve what everybody's looking for, which is a level of satisfaction, a level of happiness. I had to get a college degree. I had to get a good job. I had to have health insurance, all these check boxes. I got all those check boxes checked, and I still was not fulfilled and happy. And that's when I realized that the way in which we've been taught is it's a mirage in the desert. You think it's there, but it's not there. So I look at, for me, what I've been doing is really focusing on, how amazing my life is, how amazing my family is, my situation, the glass half full. It sounds so simple, but it's so difficult because everything in our programming is saying that that's not how it's achieved. So for me, I look at just the relationship with my wife, right? I made connections to my past, specifically with my father, who was a successful teacher and hockey coach and won all sorts of accolades, but was never home. So I learned independence at a very young age, right? As well as I connected that I had to work hard and be successful in hockey. And, I would say it's, led to success anywhere in order to be acknowledged and loved. And I thought my wife, like unconsciously, I'm thinking that my wife needs me to work hard and be successful in order for, her to love me. And that was completely false. And it's exactly what she didn't want. It was fascinating when I made that discovery. And it's made a huge difference, right, in my relationship with her and the relationship with my kids. And that's where I look at, understanding your psychology, what you want, what your background is, what drives you, what your strengths are. As you start to focus on that, you're going to start to make connections as to how the world works, how business works, how investment works. And then you're going to realize that, these checklist items are not going to give you the level of satisfaction, fulfillment, and happiness that you want. You can try doing it, and that's totally fine, right? But, look at Robin Williams. Robin Williams had every dream imaginable happen, but he hung himself, right? So and there's so many other examples, Kate Spade, you go through the list of people, right? The checklist thing is a fallacy, and it's a mirage. And so that is really what I, connected, Connor, and it's made a huge difference. But I'm continuing to have to study it, understand it, repeat it over and over and over again because of how strong the pull is to the other direction.
Don't you feel in some respects that the more you get involved in this kind of personal development space, the more you realize how much you have to do? Like for every little thing you improve and learn, it spawns like 4 other ideas, right?
It's true, but that's the game of life, man. It's like, that's the infinite game, right? People think we're in this finite game where there's this end, right? There's not an end. It's like a constant, and it's okay because you can be happy with it because what you accomplish now, right? Look, Connor, look at where you are, man. I mean, I knew you 10 plus years ago, and look at what you've achieved since then, right? And now you still want more, but looking at like how much you've done, it's like, I mean, I can't believe I've told you this a million times. I'm like, dude, do you ever sleep? Like, are you reading just constant book after book after book after book? But here's the thing. It's like, you're going to accomplish whatever your goals are now, but then next year you're going to have something new, and it's okay, right? There's always going to be something new, that's just it's the nature of our life.
That's the rat race. Tell us, Pat, so now thinking about our listeners, we got, a lot are business owners, a lot are just average, they're working at a job, it's a stay-at-home mom, it's parents of young kids. So broadly speaking, what would you suggest as someone who this has resonated with them, they want to take a step out? You had mentioned business coach, maybe it's a life coach, maybe it's a book that has been very impactful that you think has a lot of general application for personal improvement, maybe it's an online course. What would you suggest for the average person do if they want to invest in themselves, become a better person, maybe pursue kind of an entrepreneurial dream or have some kind of ambition and drive? If you have someone walk up to you on the street and say, I really want to invest in myself, I want to be a better person, what direction do you send them in? What do you suggest?
Well, and this seems like it's self-promotion, and that's not the intention at all, because all the ideas that I put out in my book weren't, they were just ideas from someone else. I just kind of put the puzzle piece together. That book, really, I thought through what my philosophy was, and it was not necessarily for a business. It was more for my legacy, right? So I wrote that book, and it incorporates so many different links to books and podcasts and things that have inspired me. So I would say, that book. But in addition to that, I mean, some of the books that have made the biggest difference for me over the last couple of years is Ryan Holiday books. I don't know if you know who Ryan is, but he wrote Ego is the Enemy, He wrote The Obstacle is the Way. He has the Daily Stoic, which is just a really cool podcast. I love the way that guy thinks, and it really helped kind of shape my psychology around things. Rich Dad Poor Dad was obviously one of those instrumental things that put me onto so many different business concepts and investment concepts, and doing things that are against the pull of what society is in right now. So I would say a lot of the Rich Dad books are important. So I would start there.
And I'm looking right now. We're chatting over Skype, and your avatar is with you and your daughter and Mr. Kiyosaki, right?
Oh yeah, that was for his. I was there for his 70th birthday. There's a group that I'm involved with. That, yeah. Anyway, it was awesome. Yeah, it was a couple years ago. I was able to bring my daughter.
That's great. So very important, right? There's so many books out there, and what I found is, some are hit or miss, but what I found is volume is important for my own self. As I've just been dedicated on consuming quantity, I inevitably will find the quality, right? There's a lot of books out there. There's a lot of strategies. There's a lot of courses. But even on the ones where I'm kind of like, I didn't gain a lot, I at least gained one or two things, and it was worth the 3 hours that I thumbed through the book or listened to the podcast. And so I think more than anything, it's just I think this is kind of a hippie buzzword nowadays, but like the intentionality, right, of just like being concerted to saying, I'm going to invest in myself. I want to be a better father, better business owner, better employee, create more value for my employer. I mean, probably most of the people in business listening to this podcast are not employers, they're employees. But good grief, speaking as an employer, and I'm sure you would feel the same, Pat, if I had an employee that was reading a ton of books, doing a ton of courses, trying to improve themselves, to improve my business, that's going to create massive value for me, which I'm going to want to reward to keep that person on board, improving my business, right? And I'm going to reward that. I'm going to think it's amazing that they're standing out and trying to be a better person, a better team member, a better colleague. That's something I definitely want to reward. Wouldn't you agree that you'd react when
a connection that, and for me, right, for education purposes, you read, you listen to things, you have to teach. Like you have to teach something to somebody. And these days it's easy to do that, whether it's a child, whether it's a friend, whatever, social media, you got to teach it, right? Because it's not going to solidify. I mean, your unconscious is fighting new information. You got to realize that it only has so much capacity, 3-5%. It's fighting new. And so in order to make it a reality and make it part of how you're wired, you have to teach it. That's one of the first steps. But I think also with employees, when an employee connects the dots between the value that they create and the money they make, then the focus becomes not necessarily the money and what they're entitled to, but it comes down to how can I create more value? How can I figure out where my skill set is, what I need to develop in order to achieve more results for whoever I'm working for? And whether it's your employer or whether it's a customer, I think employers and employees, it's a very similar dynamic. It's not this night and day thing. Very, very similar. It all comes down to somebody paying you for the value you create.
That's great stuff. So Pat Donohoe, CEO of Paradigm Life, will link to Paradigm Life, the Colby A Index that we mentioned, your book on the show notes page for listeners who are interested. It's societyandthestate.com/162. Go invest in yourself, find a book, find a course, find a mentor, find a coach, and let's all be better people. Pat, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Connor. It was my pleasure.
Thanks for listening to Society and the State. For show notes, archives, and more great content, visit societyandthestate.com.